an activist, a Gen Z, and a patriotic Kenyan at heart. On my hand is this bracelet. I don't take this bracelet for granted. There are MPs and senators and legislators and state officers who wear this bracelet, but they are not patriotic. Hawajivuni. To them this bracelet means nothing. Mkono imevaa bracelet ndio mkono inaiba. Lakini mimi nimeivaa, napenda hii nchi kutoka kwa roho. Today I want to address myself to the way forward I feel we should pursue as the new movement. With me here is Mzee from the Mau Mau movement. I stand here representing, well, in the place of the Gen Z folks. And I am not anybody's speaker. I do not hold brief for the Gen Z comrades. I am just a mouthpiece. I want to pass some important information I feel we should be concentrating on and the things we should focus on. This is my personal opinion. I am not speaking on behalf of the Gen Z or on behalf of anyone. As me, James Mulamba, I have come to the realization that the people we have in power, the MPs and the senators, are not interested to draft bills and laws that will favor us as Kenyans. It is not in their interest to favor us. It is not in their interest to seek for the better good of Kenyans. And so, we as Kenyans should take it upon ourselves to shape our laws, to shape our constitution, and to shape the rule of law we want, to shape policies and to shape legislation in this country. This way going forward, we as Kenyans, of course spearheaded by the Gen Z, we should think of the possibility of bringing together a referendum that will liberate this country. The MPs are not interested in drafting bills and laws that favor the Kenyan people. They are not interested in tackling corruption. They are not interested in tackling the appointing powers of the president. They are not interested in tackling the term limits. And when they get interested in tackling the term limits, wanataka kuongeza miaka iende 7. Imagine we've suffered already 2 years under this regime. Tuongezewe miaka ingine 7. Will we survive? So as the Kenyan people, we should take it upon ourselves to draft a popular initiative that will change the constitution and the laws that we have in this country to favor us as the common Mwananchi. Sisi tunafaa kuwe kwa kipao mbele kujitengenezea sheria kama wananchi ambazo zitatusaidia sisi na watoto wetu na maisha yetu ya usoni. We need that law. Tunahitaji sheria ya kufunga na sio kufunga, kupiga risasi na kunyonga mwizi. Mtu aliye na makosa ya ufisadi hafai kuzungushwa sana na sijui kufungwa, anafungwa ya nini? If you are a thief, you deserve to be shot or to be hanged. Hiyo mambo ya life imprisonment ama 67 years in prison haishtui hawa jamaa. It does not scare them enough. That you think and you understand that as a legislator or as a public official mwenye amepatikana na ufisadi, the worst the courts can do to you is sentence you to life imprisonment, because kupea mtu wako 50 years 67 years sentence ni kama kumfunga tu life imprisonment. That does not scare them enough. We need to send a clear warning that if you are a corrupt official in this country, you deserve to be shot or hanged, whether you work for the government or you work for the private sector. Usikuwa wewe ni managing director ama general manager ama uko kwa cheo fulani kwa kampuni fulani, ikuwe ni Equity, ikuwe ni kampuni ya mafuta, ikuwe na kampuni gani, na unataka kuiba. Na unajua ukiiba hakuna kikubwa utafanyiwa, utapewa life imprisonment, uappeal. Mwanze kuzungushana hapa, kuzungushana, kesi imetolewa. They withdrew John Waluke's case. The Sirisia MP was convicted to 67 years in prison. If he had been shot or hanged, we would not be discussing anything. There would be no one to appeal. Shoot that thief. Hang that thief. I know these sentiments may not go well and augur well with some of the Kenyans and the political elite, but the truth must be said. If China finds it prudent enough to shoot these people and to hang these people, why should we give these people too much space in this country. Why should we give them too much space? Too much space to appeal after appeal after appeal, and corruption cases in this country are never concluded. Shoot that thief, hang that thief. That is my first proposal. And I'm saying this as me. It is a proposal I think we should work on as Gen Zs and the rest of the country. We need to have a referendum. One, to tackle what I have addressed, to tackle the issue of corruption. We should have strict punishment for corrupt officials, whether in the private sector or in the public sector. The second thing we should tackle in that referendum is the appointing powers of the president. Imagine today, this country is at a standstill because we do not have a substantive IBC. And we do not have a substantive IBC because the president is central in appointing the chairperson of the IBC and the commissioners. That is the problem we have. We have an impasse in this country that we need to solve. The president has too much appointive powers that we as the citizens should take back. We give power to these people through the constitution and through voting them in. We can take back that power. We can recall those MPs. We can push that president to resign. We can also push for his impeachment. We can take back that power in the constitution by us bringing our laws and our own initiative, which will be a popular initiative, challenging those laws, taking back that power, taking back that appointive power. The president in this country has too much appointive power. I don't know if I am right legally to say that we need to take away, and we can take away that appointive power through a referendum. Lawyers who will see this and who will watch this, please direct me as prudently and constitutionally on how we can proceed with this. But I feel we've delegated too much power to the president in almost every other appointment, so that the president is to the point that the president has the liberty to misuse this power, and nobody will hold him to account. The president appoints almost everyone, all state parastatal heads, state officers, public servants, cabinet secretaries. He is now appointing the IBC. What if he appoints an IBC that favors him? Where is the neutrality there? What if the president appoints the chairperson of the IBC who is a friend of his? Because Chebukati may have been a friend of Uru's. Probably along the way they differed. But then I do not think that the president would want to appoint a chairperson who is not his friend, who they cannot work together. And working together in Kenya means show me how I can work around the loopholes of the IBC. It is as simple as that. The president is given a selection of names, a short list of names to select one chairperson. So he has the power and the freedom to choose who he wants to become the chairperson. What if all presidents in the years to come will always choose their buddies as chairpersons of IBC? How will we as Kenyans get justice in the elections? How? You saw what happened in Venezuela. Kura za Venezuela zimeibiwa, nyi mmeona hesabu ilikataa kuingiana. Because easy election boards zinakuwaga appointed by the president. Can we shift that power from the president to possibly the judiciary or to another commission? The president in this country has too much appointive powers. That is something we should tackle in a referendum, if we are within law and within the constitution to propose that. There is another thing I think we should tackle in that referendum, because I am proposing a referendum. We should tackle the term limits for the president, for the governors, for the MPs. You have already seen that when your senators and your MPs want to talk about term limits, they only talk about increasing the term limits. You would imagine the current hardships we have in this country. Mtu anataka kuongezea watu miaka. Imagine vile tumeumia saa hizi miaka 2, sisi tunasikia ni kama ni 24 years za Moi. Sasa huyu jamaa akiongezewa miaka 7. Samson Cherargei anataka kumuongezea miaka. Yes.
On the same footnote, I would wish to mention the following. In that referendum, the Kenyan populace or the Kenyan voter or Wanjiku, she or he is overrepresented under the current constitution. When you talk about governors, when you talk about counties, when you talk about even the current government, the government you are talking of, the elected positions that we create within our constitutional mechanism, that gives room for excessive cost labor, which is unnecessary as of now. We would wish even during that debate, because it's a debate now, and even that referendum, we would wish to revisit the issue of how do you reduce representation. Should we say no to the parliament and reduce the number of parliament? At what level should we say no to the current parliament we have and the current Senate we have? Should we say we don't need the Senate? Why the Senate? If the Senate is on issues of oversight. Why oversight? There's a time that we have to sit and see, do we need those oversight institutions as well? When do we need them? What would be wrong when they were departments of steel ministries aligned to where they were coming from? The same constitution we are talking about, the 2010 constitution. This constitution as well, few glitches that we never cleared. We never came up with the costing of the cost of this constitution, the current constitution we have. Because if we did come across the costing of it, we would have reduced those representation. We would have reduced our counties. We would have reduced even those appointments. And why? During the debate, we need to assess, surely do we need those nomination members of parliament? Do we need nominated senators? Do we need a bloated county employment without structures so that we can address the ghost workers mechanism, even the menace? That is a debate worth talking as we address our economic challenges moving forward without focusing on retrogressive political persuasion. Let's be focused on having a Kenyan whereby economy will be driven. We had a vision. That vision, how do we drive our vision with those myriad challenges of the bloated debt and the bloated costs and the ghost workers of even our county and the county government? I do believe, I rest my case. I trust you will be there. Please debate openly. I persuade you. May you sober up. May you sober up. Even if you are Gen Z, may you sober up. May you think positively, progressively for our nation, and how best during this debate can we steer our country. The Asian tigers, why they are ahead of us? They are ahead of us because some of those mechanisms they took, they did the best, and they aped Mau Mau freedom fighters, mechanism, values, and etiquettes.
So today, when I spoke about the referendum in the morning, I posted on my TikTok and on X. I got feedback from Kenyans on X and on TikTok saying that Eric Omondi has already proposed a referendum. Then I took time to go through Eric Omondi's referendum and his proposals. I was not aware of Eric Omondi's referendum when I addressed the referendum I need us to have as a country. Eric Omondi's referendum addresses what Mzee said. It addresses the number of counties we have as a country. Eric Omondi says we have 47 counties and we should reduce that to possibly 7. You remember we had 8 provinces. Eric Omondi proposes we could possibly go back to the provinces we had now as counties, then do away with the 47 counties. Then Eric Omondi also proposes a reduction in the number of course, when you reduce the counties, you will reduce the governors and senators and so on. So he also talks about a reduction. What is this? I think a reduction of the salaries for those salaried MPs and senators and so on. But that will work. It may work. It may also not work. I am a big supporter of devolution. I would not want us to go back to the 8 provinces because some people feel that devolution has brought too much corruption. That we devolved governments, with devolving government, we also devolved corruption. That is what some people feel. That ufisadi ilishuka na magovernors. Ikatoka huko juu kwa national government, ikashuka huko chini. But then I would want to challenge you and ask you one question. Just one. If we reduce the number of counties from 47 to 8, ufisadi itaisha? Will corruption come to an end? Reducing the number of counties from 47 to 8 will not solve the problem of corruption. Eric Omondi would be on point if he was addressing the overpayment of senators and MPs and why we are so burdened as Kenyans. Hiyo mambo ya kupunguza counties, I do not support that. I have nothing against Eric Omondi, but I don't think that is going to solve corruption. And I don't think that is going to help us and steer us in the right direction. Yes, devolution devolved corruption, but yes, devolution also devolved services. Services were brought closer to the people through devolution. The 47 counties have made governance easier and representation easier. Yes, you may say we are overrepresented as a country. I understand that. But then this representation works to our favor. If your MCS, your MPs and your senators did their representation, oversight and legislation, how it is supposed to be done constitutionally, you would see wonders in this country. The problem is them, not the representation. The problem is not the 47 counties. The problem is us as a society, because we produce those leaders. We are corrupt and they are also corrupt. We are tribal as a society and our leaders are tribal too. That will not solve our problems of corruption and tribalism, and will not solve our and representation, over representation is not entirely the issue. If those leaders did their representation and oversight and legislation work how they are supposed to do, it is my opinion that we would be better as a country. It is my opinion we would be better as a country. Yes, I understand we are overrepresented, but then can we talk about the salaries of these people? Hiyo mshahara wanalipwa ni mingi. Ni sawa, tuko represented kila mahali, tuko na MCA, tuko na MP, tuko na senator, tuko na nani. Si wapunguzwe mshahara kwanza. Genuinely, MP aache kupewa 900,000, si apewa hata 450. Si anaweza fanya kazi na hiyo. Na huwa wanakataa maneno because they feel wako na mortgages na wako na loans. Sasa tufanye hivi. Kuanzia 2027, mshahara ya senator, ya governor na MP ishuke. If you go to other countries, the salaries of these people iko chini sana. Ukienda US, watu hata hawataki kukua governor na MP huko. Watu wanalipwa pesa bure. Governor alipwa kama 200,000. Watu hawataki kuwa governor. Kuja Kenya, governor alipwa 960,000. 1 million, 1.1 na allowances. Everybody wants to be a governor. Alafu governor amepewa pesa. Hizo pesa wanaiba tu. MP wako amepewa CDF anaiba tu. By the way, I think Kenya is the only country in the world, if I am wrong, please correct me, that has pegged the CDF, the Constituency Development Fund, with the MP's roles. Kazi ya MP ni legislation, representation na oversight. Mambo ya CDF walipewa na Kibaki. Na Kibaki akipeana CDF kwa MPs, alikuwa na feel pesa inabaki kwa national government, haishuki hapa chini. Kibaki was among the people who brilliantly conceived the idea of devolution. Kwamba pesa inakaa huko juu haishuki chini, akasema wacha tutoe huku tupe MP. Na CDF huwa inapingwa sababu haiko kwa constitution, it is unconstitutional. Haikuwa iwekwa kwa sheria, sio sababu CDF ni mbaya. So the CDF we have today inafaa kukua hata pesa ya devolution. So we should scrap that CDF. That is my other proposal in the referendum we should work towards. Scrap that CDF. Mbunge hafai kukua na CDF ya kufanyia nini? Si governor ameleta devolution. Si governor amepewa pesa. Sasa mbona pesa nyingine mmeweka kwa mbunge? Kama tushapata devolution, mbunge anakaa na pesa ya nini? Which development is that MP going to bring yenye governor hata leta? Sababu hii CDF wanaiba sana. Na sisemi hivyo kusema ati the governors are better. Hata hao governors ni wezi. Shida ya Kenya haitamalizwa na kupunguza counties. Hata tukipunguza mishahara, shida ya wizi haitaisha. In fact, wataiba the more. That is why in this referendum we should tackle the issue of corruption finitely to the end. Hii mambo ya corruption tunafaa tumalizane nayo. Kunafaa kukuwa na punishment moja kali sana. So in our referendum, things we should give priority. 1, the appointive powers of the president. 2, the independence of the commissions we have in Kenya. The Police Service Commission is not independent. It is controlled by the executive. Ruto anaambia hawa jamaa, endeni muangalia hawa vijana huko wanaandamana kwa street, make sure you control them. Man, it should not be like that. The Inspector General should not be taking orders from the executive, because that is an independent commission. It is a police service commission. The same way the IBC is an independent commission. But if the president appoints the chairperson of IBC, how will he not control the IBC? We need to talk about the independence of the commissions we have in Kenya. The EACC commission is not independent. The office of the DPP and the DCI are not independent. They are politically used by the executive to settle political scores. And it is something we should not take for granted. It is something we should not normalize as Kenyans. That today, the EACC, the DPP or the DCI may decide to withdraw cases that are of public interest. Juzi, DPP alitaka withdraw kesi ya Jevanjee. Tumeibiwa 6.7 billion shillings. Na kesi wanataka kutoa. Kesi ya John Waluke walitoa. We need to talk about the independence of these commissions and how we can tackle that. And how we as Kenyans can oversight these commissions. Wamekuwa wakituchezea mchezo mwingi sana. So we need to talk about the appointive powers of the president, the independence of the commissions. We need to talk about the term limits, and by talking about the term limits, we need to reduce the term limits. We've suffered enough as Kenyans. We cannot continue suffering. US wako na presidential term limit ya miaka 4 years. Sisi kwa nini tukue na miaka 5 tena wanataka kupeleka 7? Sisi miaka hata turudishe 3. Kwa miaka 3 mtu amemaliza mambo yake ameenda nyumbani. Miaka ingine 3 tumeleta mwingine. Hata kwa MPs na kwa senators, si kwa president peke yake. Miaka 3 hao watu watafanya kazi, I will assure you. Hawa jamaa wanaonaga 5 years is too much time. So they decide mwaka ya kwanza wizi, mwaka ya pili wizi, mwaka ya 3 kuanza kufika ground kufanya miradi kidogo kidogo, mwaka ya 4 kuanza kukampeni, mwaka ya 5 kuchaguana. Ni nini tumefanyiwa? Tumefanyiwa kazi mwaka 1.5 peke yake in the 5 years. If we reduce these years to 3 years, I am telling you, you will see magic in this country. Mbunge hana time, president hana time ya wizi, akona time ya kudeliver for Kenyans. Tukue na a way of oversighting the independence of the commissions we have, na pia tupunguze appointive powers za president, tupunguze mishahara za hawa watu, na pia naona to tackle mambo ya corruption into finality. The punishment that will be meted on a corrupt public officer should be tantamount to the punishment that is given and accorded to a treasonous criminal.
Basically, and to me as my last word, many would see it negatively, many would misinterpret it. We did have a solution, but this was Mau Governing Council's resolution that was debated and taken a point forward. Which forward? We had talked about representation. So through the BBI, they were talking about equal representation. 1 man, 1 vote. On resources, they were talking of 1 man, 1 shilling. That was one. On equal representation, they were saying, and we still say, and we uphold that, when we say 1 man, 1 vote, 1 man, 1 vote, that creates the proper way and the proper definition of surely the need to elect a representative. And that one can stop gerrymandering. 2, it can stop unequal system or mechanism of resource distribution. The other thing we talked about, even in the BBI mechanism, was on areas of education. Let our children be equally remunerated, even distribution of those resources of education. So that when you talk about 10,000 students who have done the exam and they have qualified, we do not talk about from this region or from this region. All who qualify get equal representation, and also not only equal representation, but also equal resources distributed among the beneficiaries without discrimination. Finally, I think the revisiting of the BBI during the debate is also debatable. During that debate, during the referendum, it will be among, we do believe it will be among issues raised from the floor of the House by that time. It will be debated by Kenyans and come up with ample, genuine resolutions that will be able to steer our country forward. And there we are, united we stand, and we shall make it.
My closing remarks. Punguza Mizigo initiative by Kuro Court was a masterclass referendum. But Uhuru and Raila did not let that referendum see the light of day because they thought that Ekuru Court would overshadow them politically if his referendum went through. And that is what happens in this country. Brilliant proposals are watered down because you are not politically correct. So they brought to us a BBI. The BBI had some proposals that made sense to the entire country. But they watered down the Punguza Mizigo initiative because they thought a Kurwa court was going to floor them politically if his referendum went through. Because there is nothing that was wrong with Punguza Mizigo, absolutely. And I am proposing in the new referendum we should start discussing as Gen Zs. We should go back to the Punguza Mizigo referendum. Look at what was good in that referendum. Look at what was good in that BBI.
I beg to excuse myself. I trust the debate will be open during the referendum.
So I was saying, we need to go back to the Punguza Mizigo initiative and to the BBI referendum. The BBI initiative. Let's cross-examine both of them. What was good here? What was good here? Then bring in our new ideas, and among them, the issues I have listed. Let's coalesce these things together. Let's sit down and strategize and think of how to write down and pen down a masterclass referendum, a masterclass initiative, popular initiative, and Article 258, if I'm not wrong, that will capture the hearts of every Kenyan and that will capture the interest of every Kenyan. Let us have a referendum that will shape this country and that will shape the law of the land and that will favor Kenyans from today going forward. Let us think of ways on how to liberate ourselves from the current political class. And